නිවසේ මෙවැනි මත් පිට රැඳෙන විස බීජ 99.9%ක්ම විනාශ කරන විම් ක්ලීනර්ස්.
Tonight, a sign of things to come. The UK government releases a laundry list of Sri Lankan human rights concerns in its 2020 report. About time. Gene sequencing capacity in the island expanded amid COVID threat.
Now there are 2 laboratories doing the gene sequencing to identify variants, that is in Sri Jawadanapura University and in the Colombo University.
Skeletons in the closet. Cope finds recruitment malpractice at the Housing Development Authority from 2015 to 2019. Looming India series in jeopardy. Another from the England series touring party tests COVID positive. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Friday, the 9th of July, 2021.
කට උත්තර නැති වෙන්න කලින් සිග්නල් ඩීප් ක්ලීන් එකකට මාරු වෙන්න.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaika. Now, the National Housing Development Authority came under the scrutiny of the Committee on Public Enterprises last evening. During the proceedings, it was revealed that various recruitments had been made to the body outside the due criteria between 2015 and 2019, with even trainees kept on the payroll beyond the stipulated time period at a cost of over 1 billion rupees.
2015 2019 දක්වා පුහුණු කාර්ය මණ්ඩල කොච්චර බඳවගෙන තියෙනවද? කොන්ත්‍රාත් පතර බිල් කොච්චර බඳවගෙන තියෙනවද? ඒ සඳහා ඒ දෙකටම කොමන මුදලක් වියදම් වෙලා තියෙනවද කියන කාර්ය සම්බන්ධව
2015 110ක් පුහුණුවයි ඉඳලා තියෙනවා. 2016 530යි, 2017 2649යි, 2018 1767යි, 2019 240යි.
ඒ කියන්නේ මොන කවුද මේකේ නැද්ද මම අහපු එකේ නැද්ද ඔය
නෑ මේ පුහුණුවට බඳව ගත්ත කට්ටිය.
පුහුණුවට බඳගත්තා ඒගොල්ලෝ මාස 6කින් ආපහු යනවද?
නෑ පරික්‍රමය නම් මාස 6කින් යවන්න ඕන. මේගොල්ලන් දික් කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට දීමනාවක් දවසකට රුපියල් 500 සහ උපාධිධාරීන්ට රුපියල් 1000 වෙන්න ගෙවලා ඒ අය නිවාස සංගත අධිකාරී ඉඳලා තියෙනවා මේ කාලේ.
තාම ඉන්නවද?
නෑ දැන් නෑ 2019 12 31කින් ඒ කට්ටිය යවලා තියෙන්නේ.
කියන්නේ විශාල මුදලක් කියන්නේ.
පුහුණුවට කියලා තමයි බඳවගෙන තියෙන්නේ.
ඒකකට හිටපු අමාත්‍යතුමාගේ අනුමැතියත් ඒ වගේම මේ වෙනකොට තිබුණු පාලන අධිකාරියේ අනුමැතියමත් තමයි බඳවගත්තේ. මේ සමස්ත කණ්ඩායම අඩකට වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් සම්මතුර දිස්ත්‍රික් කාර්යාලයට අනියුක්ත කරලා තිබුණා. ඒ කාර්යාලය කොටස් 3කට කඩලා ඒ කොටස් 3 ඇතුලේ තමයි මේ සමස්තයේ බහුතරයක් හිටියේ. අනිත් කට්ටිය අනිත් දිස්ත්‍රික් කාර්යාල වලට අනියුක්ත කරලා තිබුණා. මේගොල්ලෝ යොදාගත්තේ ඒකට තිබුණු නිවාස සංගත වැඩසටහනත් ඒකෙනි වැඩ කටයුතු වලට තමයි යොදාගත්තේ.
බැලුමටම පේනවා අවසාන අවුරුදු දෙකේ අනුමත කාර්යකට වගේ ප්‍රමාණයක් පුහුණු කියලා නිකන් බඳවගෙන තියෙනවා. මම අහපු ප්‍රශ්න අනිත් කාරණේ තමයි මේකට වැයච්ච මුදල.
මිලියන 583ක් වැය කරලා තියෙනවා පුහුණු කටයුතු සඳහා. කොන්ත්‍රාත් පදනමේ බඳව ගත්ත අයට මිලියන 641ක්.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඔක්කොම 1 බිලියන් විතර තියෙනවා.
1 බිලියන් විතර තියෙනවා.
එතකොට සභාපතිතුමා මේ බිලියනයකට වැඩි මුදල් නාස්ති කළා. ඔක්කොම හම්බන්තොට දිස්ත්‍රික්කේ තමයි 99%ක් මේ දරුවෝ. මේ ළමයි ටිකක් අමාරුවේ දාලා. අද මේ කරපු කාර්යයට මොකද්ද ගන්න තීන්දුව?
මේකට අපිට අමාත්‍යාංශෙත් මැදිහත් වෙලා මාස 2ක් ඇතුළත විශේෂ පරීක්ෂණයක් පවත්වලා රිපෝට් එකක් අපිට එවනවාද මේ මොකද මේකට වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කවුද මේක වග කියන්න ඕන කවුද මේවට අස්සම් කරලා තියෙන්නේ
ඒකම දැන් මේ නිවාස යෝජනා ක්‍රමවල නිවාස දීපුවයි පදිංචි නැහැ විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් ඒකට හේතුව තමයි යටිතල පහසුකම් නැහැ හුඟක් ඒවයි නිකන් ගිහිල්ලා ගෙවල් ටික දීලා ණයකාරයොත් කරලා මිනිස්සු ඊළඟට තව කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවා ගෙවල් තියෙන ආදායම් තියෙන අයට ගෙවල් දීලා ඒතකොට මේ මිනිස්සු ඉන්නේ නැහැ ඒගොල්ලන්ට ගෙවල් තියෙනවා
ප්‍රමතුමා කියපු කාරණේ සම්බන්ධව මම 100%ක් එකඟයි ඒකට ප්‍රධාන හේතුව තමයි නිවාස ඉදි කරන්න කලින් අපි හොයලා බලන්න ඕනේ අනිකුත් යටිතල පහසුකම් සම්බන්ධව. එහෙම හොයලා බැලීමකින් තොරව පටන් අරගුණු නිවාසවල පදිංචි නැත්තේ වතුර නැහැ, පාර නැහැ, ඒ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න. එතකොට ඒවා ඇත්තටම නිවාස සංඝාධිකාරියට ඒ යටිතලක පහසුකම් දෙන්නත් අමාරුයි. ඒක විශාල ගැටලුවක් අපිට ලොකු බරක් අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශයට මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ.
නේ දැන් උතන 1 බිලියන් විතර ලොකු මුදලකුත් වගේ ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා අර ඉස්සෙල්ලා එකේ. ඒ නිසා ඒක සම්බන්ධව ගන්න පරීක්ෂණයෙන් අදාළ නිලධාරි දැන් විශේෂයෙන් ඒ මොකක්hari මේකේ process එකක් තියෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් බලලා ඒක ගැන අපිට වාර්තාවක් සපයන්න ඊට පස්සේ මේ වගේම ඔබතුමාට තියෙන නෛතික ප්‍රතිපාදන යටතේ ඒක AG department එක හරහා ඔබතුමා proceed කරන්න මේ අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. එතන නීති විරෝධී විදිහට මේ වැඩේ කරලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒක ඔබතුමාට තියෙන ලේකම්වරයා විදිහට ඔබතුමත් අමාත්‍යාංශ ලේකම්වරයාත් දෙදෙනා වගකීමට බැඳිලා ඉන්නවා. ඒක සම්බන්ධව නෛතිකව ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්න.
අඩසේ වසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයක රයිනෝ රෝෆින් සහ සීලිං ෂීට්.
Health authorities announced today that measures have been taken to ramp up tests to identify new and emerging COVID-19 variants by equipping the Colombo University with the necessary facilities to carry out gene sequencing tests. As such, the country now has 2 dedicated laboratories capable of conducting the tests to identify new COVID-19 variants.
COVID-19, it evolves, it mutates, but when it does so, it's an aberration. Since the novel coronavirus pandemic first broke out in Wuhan of China, there have been numerous variants of the virus, of which the World Health Organization only lists 4 as variants of concern. It also lists 4 as variants of interest. Given the real possibility of more variants popping up, dangerous or otherwise, efforts towards identifying new strands too have to be ramped up. The most common detection method is gene sequencing, and in Sri Lanka, which is battling the 2 dangerous variants Alpha and Delta, the only gene sequencing facility is at the University of Sri Jayawardenepura. If the last year and a half has taught us anything, it is that one facility isn't enough.
Now there are 2 laboratories doing the gene sequencing to identify variants, that is in Sri Jayawardenepura University and in the Colombo University. Both these university laboratories are sending their reports to the Ministry of Health Epidemiology Unit. So we will be getting more updates on these in the next media briefing.
For over 2 months, schools have been closed with education activities conducted online. Though it is a good solution as a stopgap measure, it cannot possibly be sustained given social inequalities. In a bid to expedite the restart of schools, the government made the decision to inoculate teachers with some sections of students to also follow soon. The Health Promotion Bureau says that the vaccine rollout for teachers will begin next week.
The Ministry of Health and the government has decided to vaccinate all school teachers, and vaccination of the school teachers has already started, and it will continue next week also from the 12th onwards. And in addition to the school teachers, non-academic staff, security staff and other staff all will be vaccinated. The idea is to make school a safe place where all adults in the school environment are vaccinated against COVID-19.
Sri Lanka may have had its hiccups in its immunization drive, but the daily numbers suggest that it is in top gear at the moment. 188,368 persons were administered with the first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine yesterday. What's more, 33,550 people were given the second dose of the same vaccine as well. In addition, the second dose of the Sputnik vaccine was given to 12 people yesterday, while 80 persons were given the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine too. All in all, the number of jabs administered yesterday is by far the highest single-day vaccinations done so far in the island. Meanwhile, with the health sector trade union action coming to an end, the daily COVID caseload too has picked up. Yesterday, there were 1,270 confirmed cases. The Western Province reported the highest with 546. One of its districts, Gampa, had the highest number of infections from any district with 229. The other 2 districts in the Western Province, Kalutara and Colombo, recorded 180 and 137 cases respectively. At the other end of the spectrum, Kilinochchi reported the lowest daily caseload with just 1 infection. The new cases confirmed yesterday also included 47 imported cases.
මේ මොහොතේදී අපිට වැදගත් වෙන්නේ ආර්ථික කටයුතු සහ අනෙකුත් සමාජීය කටයුතු ඉදිරියට යන ගමන් මේ රෝගය පාලනය කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගැනීමයි. එහිදී රටේ සියලු දෙනාම එකවගේ වගකීමෙන් කටයුතු කරනවා නම් මම හිතනවා මේ සංචරණ සීමා නැවත පැනවීමකට අවස්ථාවක් ඉඩ නොදී රෝගය ක්‍රමානුකූලව පාලනය කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා මේ මොහොතේ අපි දකිනවා දැනට සති කිහිපයකට පෙර තිබුණු තත්වයට වඩා හොඳ තත්වයක් තියෙන බව. නමුත් මේක තවදුරටත් ඒ ආකාරයෙන් පවතිනවද නැද්ද කියන එක අද තීරණය කරන්න අමාරුයි. තව සති කිහිපයක් ගත වෙනකොට තමයි ඒ පිළිබඳවත් යම්කිසි තීරණයකට එන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ.
As for today, 964 new COVID-19 infections have been confirmed so far. It means there are 26,480 active cases in the island. In the meantime, there were 1,451 COVID-19 recoveries as well today. That puts the number of people to recover from the virus in Sri Lanka at 241,035. In other developments, the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 announced today that the Pimura area in the Kakulandala South Gram Nildara division in the Kalutara district is isolated until further notice. It also announced that 2 areas in the Mana and Kegal districts were brought out of isolation.
Big 3.
Now, a report by the UK government's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office has pointed out what it feels was a deterioration of the human rights situation in Sri Lanka during 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The report says that surveillance and intimidation of civil society and detention of people without charge increased, while the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act to detain terror suspects also spiked, using the arrest of terror suspect lawyer Hijaz Hizbullah as an example.
The United Kingdom's 2020 Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office report on human rights and democracy has singled out Sri Lanka for what it alleges was a deterioration of its human rights situation. The report says that despite the government's successful handling of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, surveillance and intimidation of civil society and detentions without charge increased, religious burial rights were constrained, and the country's post-conflict accountability and reconciliation efforts suffered a setback. It also singles out the presidential pardon granted to Sri Lanka Army Sergeant Sunil Ratnayaka, who was convicted in 2015 for the murder of 8 civilians in Jaffna during the country's war, as evidence of a lack of accountability. Further, the report also criticized the appointment of what it termed controversial military figures accused of war crimes to government positions and the placing of the Secretariat for Non-Governmental Organizations under the purview of the Ministry of Defense. The 20th Amendment to the Constitution also came under criticism for extending executive powers over appointments to judicial posts and independent institutions, while also reversing checks and balances over key institutions. It also cited COVID-19 related delays to parliamentary elections last year as having given the government a free hand minus parliamentary oversight between March and August. It also added that the government continued to use the controversial Prevention of Terrorism Act to detain terror suspects, including lawyer Hijaz Hizbullah, despite assurances given to the UN Human Rights Commission that it would be reviewed. The report also cites international rights groups as having reported an increase in intimidation, surveillance and online abuse, including threats to lawyers, journalists, families of disappeared persons and individuals working on human rights and anti-corruption. The UK government says that it will continue to press for progress of human rights, gender equality and protection for minorities and vulnerable groups in 2021.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
ගෙදරකට තේ හදනවා කියන්නේ වෙනම වැඩ. එක එක්කිනාගේ පදම වෙනස්. මැලිබන් තේ ගෙදර පදමට තේ.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today hurled allegations at the government, saying that the Express Pearl $40 million damages claim were calculated without a comprehensive environmental valuation. But Justice Minister Ali Sabri cleared out the obvious misconception, explaining that the interim claim was just the tip of the iceberg, with the vessel's insurance policy covering it up to $7 billion in damages. He also revealed that the Attorney General is currently in the process of vetting an international law firm to handle the legal processes against the vessel's owners. That will also include an expert damage assessment team who will calculate the final claim outcome.
The much-anticipated Securities and Exchange Commission bill was tabled in Parliament today by Chief Government Whip Minister Johnston Fernando after the presentation of annual performance reports of several state institutions. However, most of the day's short session was taken up in government responses to opposition leader Sajith Premadasa's questions regarding damages claims for the Express Pearl maritime disaster, where he accused the authorities of submitting inaccurate financial claims.
Environmental valuation එකක් කරන්න නැතුව කොහොමද $40 million කියලා කියන්නේ? ඒ වගේම ඒ වරද කරපු සමාගම කියනවා අන්තර්කාලීනව ඩොලර් මිලියන 3.6ක්ද කොහෙද දෙන්නම් කියලා. කොහොමද වැරදි කරපු කට්ටිය අන්තර්කාලීන දීමනාව තීන්දුව කරන්නේ?
අපි මිලියන 40ක් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් වන්දිය ඉල්ලලා තියෙන්නේ සම්පූර්ණ වන්දියක් හැටියට නෙවෙයි. ඒක ජූනි 1 වෙනිදා වනකොට අතුරු වන්දියක් හැටියට තමයි ඒක කරලා තියෙන්නේ. විවිධ ශේෂ්ත්‍ර වලින් යම් ප්‍රමාණ අරගෙන පළවන අතුරු හිමිකම් පෑමක් හැටියට ගරු නීතිපතිතුමාගේ උපදෙස් පිට ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. පූර්ණ කාලීනව ඒවා ගණනය කිරීම පිළිබඳව තාක්ෂණික වශයෙන් සහයෝගය ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා ජාත්‍යන්තර ආයතනවලත් එක්ක අපි සම්බන්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉන්ටර්නැෂනල් ලෝ ෆර්ම්ස් එන්ගේජ් කරගන්න. නීතිපතිතුමාගේ උපදෙස් අනුව කණ්ඩායමක් තෝරාගැනීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒ කණ්ඩායමත් එක්කම එනවා මේ වගේ පරිසර හානියකදී තක්සේරු කිරීම පිළිබඳව විශේෂඥ දැනුම ඇති අය. ඔවුන්ව සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන මේක කරන්න තමයි අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. දීවර ප්‍රජාවට සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි ඉල්ලපු වන්දියෙන් ඔවුන් මුල් අවස්ථාවේදී අපි දල වශයෙන් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් මිලියන 10ක් ඉල්ලලා තිබුණට වැඩිදුර එවිඩන්ස් දෙන තුරු අපිට මිලියනයයි දීලා තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් ඔබතුමා කියන ආකාරයට එක සංවේදී කට්ටියක් ඉඳලා උන්ට මුදල් ගෙවීම වඩා වැදගත් හින්දා ලැබුණු මුදලින් වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් ඔවුන්ට අපි වෙන් කරලා දීලා තියෙනවා 420 මිලියන් ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒක කළුතර කොළඹ සහ ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ ඒ ගෙවීම් ලබන සතිය විතර වෙනකොට සිද්ධ වෙයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියනයකට මේක රක්ෂණය කරලා තියෙනවා PNI එකෙන්. ඒ අරුණාම PNI අතර තියෙනවා ඔවුන් අතර තව යුනියන් එකක්. ඒකෙන් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියන 7ක් දක්වා මේක රක්ෂණය වෙලා තියෙනවා. එම නිසා අපි අපේ ඉල්ලීම නිසි පරිදි කරොත් අපිට මේක ඉස්ස කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි. නමුත් ඔබතුමා දන්නවා ගරු කතානායකතුමනි ඔවුන් ලේසියෙන් දෙන්න කැමති නැහැ. අපි ඔප්පු කරන්නට ඕන.
ඔබතුමා කිව්වා මේ බස්නාහිර පළාතේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක 3 කේන්ද්‍ර කරගෙන තමයි මේ හානිය ගණනය කරන්න කියලා. ඔය දිස්ත්‍රික්ක 3ටම පමණක් සීමා වෙලා නැහැ. මම යෝජනා කරන ඔබතුමාට කරුණා කරලා සෙසු දිස්ත්‍රික්ක පිළිබඳවත් සොයා බැලීමක් කරන්න. දැන් අපිට වාර්තා වෙනවා නැගෙනහිර වෙරළෙනුත් යම් යම් හානි සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබෙනවා මත්ස්‍ය සම්පතට. ඒ අනිකුත් දිස්ත්‍රික්ක පිළිබඳවත් සොයලා බලන්නයි කියලා මම ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා.
මේ වන විට විපක්ෂ නායකතුමා අපි වන්දි ලබා දීම කළුතර කොළඹ ගම්පහ කියන එකේ තමයි ඔවුන් අපිට ලිඛිතව ඉදිරිපත් කළා තියෙන්නේ. ඊට අමතරව අපි මාතර දිස්ත්‍රික්කය, ගාල්ල දිස්ත්‍රික්කය, පුත්තලම් දිස්ත්‍රික්කය, මන්නාරම දිස්ත්‍රික්කය මේ දිස්ත්‍රික්කවල දිසාපතිතුමන්ලා සමග දීවර අමාත්‍යාංශයේ වෙනමම ඔවුන්ට යම් හානියක් සිදු වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒකත් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. අපි සඳුදාට හැමදාම අධිකරණ අමාත්‍යතුමාගේ අමාත්‍යාංශය අපේ රැස්වීම පවත්වනවා. අලුත් ආදර්ශයක් හැටියට ඔබතුමා ආවොත් හොඳයි නේද?
Following this, Parliament sittings were adjourned for the day at noon until 10 a.m. on the 19th of July.
Now, the Department of Immigration and Immigration announced today that the validity period of all types of tourist and resident visas to foreigners will be extended by 30 days, starting from tomorrow. Issuing a communique, the department stated that the relevant visas will be extended until the 8th of August. It added that only visa fees required for the period will be levied for visas that expire within the prescribed period. Tourist visa holders are advised to pay the relevant visa fee and get the visas extended on or before the 8th of August via the site eservices.immigration.gov.lk. Or if tourists wish to leave Sri Lanka before the prescribed period, the journey would be facilitated if the relevant fee is paid at the airport. Tourists can also get the visa endorsed by visiting the department head office at Battaramulla on or before the 8th of August and making the relevant payment there. What's more, resident visa holders can make appointments to extend their visas by contacting 070 710 1050 between 8:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. on working days. Once an appointment is made, the resident visa holders should visit the head office in Battaramulla to collect their visa endorsements on or before the 8th of August after making the necessary visa payments. The Samagi Janabalawege filed several fundamental rights petitions today, challenging the arrest of people under the quarantine regulations banning public meetings and protests to prevent the spread of COVID-19. The petitioners allege that the recent arrests made by the police and the crackdown on protesters under the provisions of the said quarantine regulation violate the fundamental rights of those individuals. The SJB's General Secretary MP Ranjit Madhumu Bandara, MP Harshan Rajakaruna and MP Mayantha Disanayaka had filed separate FR petitions before the Supreme Court on the matter. The Inspector General of Police, the Director General of Health Services and the Health Minister and the Attorney General have been named as respondents of these petitions. This comes at the heels of the protests that were carried out yesterday, whereby over 40 persons were arrested by the police. Accordingly, they have sought the Supreme Court to rule that the conduct of the police is in violation of the freedom of speech and expression guaranteed by the Constitution. Now then, 4 suspects remanded with regard to the sexual exploitation of a 15-year-old girl via a website were released today on bail, however, on strict conditions. The released are the Deputy Chairman of the Mihintale Pradesha Sabha, a cardiologist attached to the Sri Lanka Navy Hospital, as well as 2 gem businessmen. The suspects were told to refrain from interfering in the ongoing inquiry.
To date, the police have apprehended 35 suspects pertaining to the sexual exploitation of a 15-year-old girl via a website. When the case was taken up before the Colombo Magistrates Court this evening, the magistrate announced that the girl at the centre of the incident easily identified the 4 suspects during an identification parade held this morning. The magistrate added that as per the girl, none of these suspects had inquired about her age while being sexually involved. Quoting the girl, the magistrate went on to say that the main suspect involved in the racket, identified as Rajiv, had concealed her actual age, indicating she is aged 18 or 19 when being sold for sexual activities. Meanwhile, taking the submissions made by the attorneys of the suspects into consideration, Additional Magistrate of Colombo Lochani Abe Vikrama stated that keeping them in remand custody despite the conclusion of investigations is unjustified and therefore ordered their release. Accordingly, they were released on a cash bail of 25,000 rupees each, along with a surety of 2.5 million rupees each. Further, the suspects were strictly advised to refrain from interfering in the ongoing inquiry or pressurizing witnesses of the case. In the event of such conduct, the magistrate warned that bail conditions of the suspects will be revoked and will be remanded until the conclusion of the case. In addition, the suspects were ordered to report to the Child and Women Bureau on every Sunday between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. Meanwhile, owner of another website who published an advertisement of the minor was arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department today and was produced before court. He was then ordered to be remanded until the 20th of this month. What's more, the manager and a receptionist of a hotel located in the Milagiriya Avenue in Bambalapitiya, used by the suspects to engage in sexual activities with the girl, were also remanded until the 16th of this month after being produced before court.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the additional interest rate of 2% per annum paid to special deposit accounts has been extended by 2 years. New Minister of Finance Basil Rajpaksha has permitted the move following a recommendation from the central bank.
Whilst taking into account the recommendations put forth by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank, new Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa has decided to permit rollover of special deposit accounts up to an accumulated period of 24 months from the initial date of placing the deposits. The central bank announced that special deposit accounts introduced by the government in April last year in order to seek assistance for the national effort to overcome the effects of COVID-19 have received a favourable response. As at the 2nd of July 2021, total deposits received into SDAs is over $450 million. The government is also offering an additional interest of up to 2% per annum to the extended special deposit accounts. A Gazette Extraordinary has also been issued publishing the regulations laid down by the minister in this regard. Further, the central bank has issued necessary directions to the authorised dealers to implement the new decisions.
Now then, Sri Lankan shares settled higher today, boosted by strong gains in financial stocks. The CSE All Share Price Index settled up 0.52% at 7,852.19, having ended 1.36% higher for the week, while the S&P SL 20 Index of more liquid stocks gained 23.13 points to close at 2,979.01. With that, here's Dimantha Matthew with today's stock market report.
Today we saw the market in the green again for the second consecutive day. However, not without volatility. Again today we saw a lot of volatility in the market taking place. So at the start of the day we saw a relatively high spike in the market during early trading within the first 30 minutes of trades, and then afterwards we saw a gradually slow downward trend. However, it erased all gains that were there at the start of the day, but the market managed to close with a marginal gain of 2 points. However, you can can say that there was very much more interest coming into the blue chip counters. Resulting from that, what we are seeing is the S&P SL20 having a higher gain of around 20 points during the day, as the overall S&P SL20 index closed just below 3,000 points at 2,955 points.
Now then, in what has been described as a daring nighttime raid in Haiti's Port-au-Prince on Wednesday, a group of armed gunmen assassinated the country's democratically elected president, Jovenel Moïse, and injured First Lady Martine Moïse. According to reports, 53-year-old President Moïse was found dead in the aftermath of the attack with 12 bullet wounds and a gouged eye. The country's authorities later arrested 15 former Colombian military personnel and 2 dual American Haitian citizens, while 3 others were killed and 8 others remain on the run. 11 of the attackers were arrested following a firefight at the Taiwanese embassy located in the vicinity of the late president's home, where they had sought refuge. Video footage from nearby CCTV cameras showed the attackers clearly identifying themselves as members of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency before storming into the compound. One of the 2 American nationals arrested has been identified as a former bodyguard employed at the Canadian Embassy in Haiti. The Sri Lanka national cricket team's data analyst has tested positive for COVID-19 following a PCR test carried out on the entire contingent that travelled to England for their series after batting coach Grant Flower tested positive. These developments have led to the rescheduling of the series with India, which will now begin on the 18th, 5 days later than the previous schedule. Quoting the president of Sri Lanka Cricket, Indian media reports that SLC will earn approximately $12 million for playing 6 matches against India. According to SLC President Shami Silva, Sri Lanka initially finalised 3 matches. However, following negotiations with the Indian Cricket Board, the hosts managed to increase this to 6, which will enable the board to raise an additional $6 million in revenue. In any case, India is sending a second string of players to Sri Lanka, led by Shikhar Dhawan, who will be making his international captaincy debut in this series. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.